once we have actually developed these scenarios, how do we use them? Okay. One way of using the scenario planning technique is to look at those 4 scenarios. Let us say we have come up with 4 scenarios. The future 5 years from now could be one of 4 types. There are 4 scenarios. So we say, let's look at the most probable scenario. Out of these 4, let's look at the most probable scenario and let us plan for that scenario. That's one approach. That's one approach, right? Now, in this case, if that scenario occurs, things are very good because we have planned for it. But suppose that scenario does not occur and one of the other 3 scenarios occurs, then the company is in trouble. The company is in deep trouble because the company has not planned for that scenario. What's another way of using scenario planning? Let's look at the worst scenario. That is, there are 4 possible pictures that might come up of the industry 5 years from now. And we say that out of these 4 pictures, this particular picture is the worst, right? Where the market shrinks, where prices fall, where raw material costs go up, a lot of negative consequences happen together. That's one scenario, and that's the worst scenario. So let's say that we plan for the worst scenario. Now, this is good because if you plan for the worst scenario, you plan for the worst that could happen, and if something is better than that, you can take advantage of it as it happens. However, the disadvantage with this approach is that somebody who has planned for one of the other scenarios, a company that is planned for one of the other scenarios, if those scenarios happen, would do much better than your company, right? Okay. Now, let's look at another way of using scenario analysis. Let's say we plan for the best scenario, right? Now, here, when the scenario is the best, certainly the company is in a position to take maximum advantage of what is happening, and if you plan for that, then the cumulative advantage that you gain is significantly higher. However, a plan for a best scenario will not be at all suited for, let us say, the worst scenario if it were to happen. Now remember, today when you are framing those scenarios, you really do not know which one is going to happen. So if you plan for the best possible scenario and the worst scenario comes up, your company could be in very big trouble. The other way is that you could choose a plan which is satisfactory for all scenarios, right? Mind you, it is not the best for any scenario, but it is a plan which is suitable for all the 4 scenarios. This looks like a good option because in this case you are saying that regardless of what happens, the company would be able to adapt to that change in the environment. It is certainly a good option, but there is a better option, and that is that instead of waiting for this scenario to unfold and responding to it, the best thing to do would be for the company to actively try and see if it can influence the way in which the scenarios unfold. For instance, if you have a tire company like MRF, right? And MRF has invested largely in radial tires. Now, if the market for these radial tires increases rapidly, it will benefit the company. Now, one scenario is where the market increases rapidly, prices of rubber crash, and the company makes a lot of money. Another scenario is where the market for radial tires does not increase, and the prices for rubber, which is the raw material for tires, goes through the roof, and the company does badly, right? Now, instead of waiting for these scenarios to evolve, if the company were to say that let us try and actively involve ourselves in creating a market for radial tires in the intercity areas. Now, I need to take you to a little bit of detail on tires. See, these radial tires are very good, provided the roads are smooth. If the roads are bumpy, if the roads are uneven, if the roads are bad, like most intercity roads in India, then you cannot use radial tires. Or rather, if you use radial tires, you would need to keep changing them fairly often. Now, MRF, if it wants to ensure that the market for radial tires goes up, must actively lobby with the government to ensure that intercity roads are built at a much faster pace than they were built earlier. Now, this is one way in which MRF can actually influence the market, right? It can influence the unfolding of a scenario which is favorable for itself. So, the last plan, what we talked about, choose a plan to bring about the best scenario. This is the best way to respond to scenario analysis, scenario planning, right? Let's not wait for scenarios to happen. Let's try and see how we can create a scenario which is the most appropriate for our company. Thank you.